This video is sponsored by Aeropress. Stick around to get a 15% discount. Toyota has been secretly taking over America, but I'm not talking about their cars. I'm talking about trucks. They go hand in hand with hard work, tending the land, whatever the heck this is. Things that are undeniably, unashamedly Japanese. You see, Japanese brands account for over 60% of the mid-sized truck market in the US, and Toyota, by themselves, is 40%. So what's the secret? How the heck did a company known for this, who came out with this, end up changing what it means to own one of the most American things in America, the pickup truck? Well, the secret had a little something to do with winning races. Toyota has been racing their cars since the 1950s. Crowns rallying in Australia, Coronas circuit racing in Japan, even prototype cars competing on the world stage. But their trucks weren't exactly the best. After the war, in 1952, Toyota had the SG pickup truck, and it was a pretty simple truck. Ladder frame, drum brakes, and a 48 horsepower 1.5 liter engine. Just enough truck to take your rice and grain to market. But in America, things were a little bit different. Big V8s, burly inline sixes, these were the engines of choice for the American buyer. So Toyota kept the SG to themselves, along with the FA, the Land Cruiser, and the Toyota Stout. But by the late 60s, the global market for trucks was getting huge. In 1968 alone, Ford sold 500,000 of their F-Series trucks. And well, Toyota wasn't gonna sit by and not get a piece of that pie. They already had the Land Cruiser, but that was more Jeep than it was F100. So in 1968, they brought their first dedicated pickup truck to the USA, the Toyota Hilux. The thing was though, it wasn't really like most American trucks. In fact, underneath, it was kinda not even a Toyota. It was a Hino Briska, a light-duty truck made by the Toyota sub-brand Hino. But regardless of what it may have been under the skin, the reality was, it was going up against trucks like the Ford F100, Chevy C110, and Dodge D100. And what big block monster of an engine did Toyota throw at the Hilux to compete? Well, it was a 1.9 liter four-cylinder, making an earth-shaking 85 horsepower. But here's the thing, the Hilux was tiny. It weighed 2,300 pounds compared to an F100's 4,000. It was smaller in every dimension, more approachable and usable than what the Americans offered. And it really seemed like a new class of truck that the American people wanted. That is, if it wasn't for the chicken tax. Yeah, you heard me right. The chicken tax. Now, without getting into too much detail, the basics of the chicken tax were this. After World War II, America started farming chickens like crazy. They were pumping out so many chickens that poultry went from a luxury item to a staple food across the planet. And well, farmers and politicians in countries like Germany, France, and the Netherlands weren't too pleased with big chicken in the US affecting prices overseas. So they decided to tax and restrict chicken imports to Europe. That isn't the chicken tax though. The chicken tax was President LBJ holding his middle finger up to Europe on one hand and throwing down the Uno reverse card with the other by imposing a 25% tax on all foreign potato starch, dextrin, brandy, and light trucks. All the ingredients necessary for a tailgate at the Pringles factory, but also all major exports coming out of Europe. And let's bring it all back here, the tax that inadvertently made the Toyota Hilux way too expensive in the US. Toyota was basically stuck between a rock and a hard place, and for the first couple years of selling the Hilux in the US, things didn't look good. But then they had an idea. What if they took the bed off the truck, shipped both parts to the US, and then just bolted it back together there? A truck cab or bed by itself does not a truck make, it's just parts. And well, according to the law, Toyota was right. So in 1971, Toyota began exporting the Hilux in parts and assembling them in Long Beach, California. And now, with the price of a Toyota truck in the US finally competitive with domestic options, the era of Japanese truck dominance could finally begin. Just like how this sponsor segment can finally begin.
Are you okay?
We've been at this for 8 hours. How are you not tired?
Aeropress. When your 1 hour job turns into an 8 hour engine out procedure, the Aeropress XL is the ticket to getting the job done. The Aeropress isn't just another coffee maker. It's an easy to use, ultra portable coffee press. And its 3-in-1 brewing means that in just 1 minute, you can have rich, smooth, full bodied coffee, the vital lifeblood of any gearhead. And with the Aeropress XL, you have double the serving. More than enough for when an early morning brake job turns into yet another late night bolt extraction. So hit the link in the description to get 15% off your Aeropress and take your coffee game up a gear. Now, Japanese truck dominance didn't happen all at once. Over the 70s and 80s, Toyota took small steps in expanding its truck offering. The Hilux was updated, taking some tech from the very successful Land Cruiser, and in 1981 they developed the Toyota Trekker with a company called Winnebago, a car that would go on to become the Forerunner. And by 1983, the Hilux had its biggest redesign yet. Fuel-injected engines, even an option for a turbo, independent front suspension, a solid four-wheel drive system, and the Hilux, now called the Toyota Pickup, was finally a real competitor in America. But even still, it wasn't beating the big three. So Toyota decided to take their trucks where they had been taking their cars for the last decade, the racetrack. In 1983, Toyota joined forces with a company called PPI to go off-road racing. They took the humble Toyota pickup and beefed it up to handle the intense conditions of desert and stadium racing. 3-stage torsion bars, a lift kit with Bilstein shocks, chunky off-road tires, and at the wheel was none other than Ivan Iron Man Stewart, a man who spent the 70s winning basically every race he entered. And in their inaugural season of the Mickey Thompson's Stadium Racing Series, they won nearly every race to secure the 1983 Manufacturers Championship, with Ivan Stewart taking the driver's title as well. And well, the truck was so good, they did it again in 1984, and then in 1985, then 86, 87, 88, and on until 1994. 11 years. 11 manufacturer wins by Toyota. The Toyota Pickup was the fastest truck in America, and Toyota made sure the public knew about it. Magazine articles, ad campaigns, tons of race coverage. Hell, in 1988, the production truck got a 3-liter V6 loosely based off the race truck's motor. The street version made 150 horsepower, not quite the 500 plus of the race truck, but for a small truck, it certainly felt brisk for the time. Plus, they kept winning races too. The Grand National Sports Truck Championship in 1990, the Baja 500 in 91 and 92, and in 1993, the 3 crown jewels of truck racing, the Nevada 500, Baja 500, and the legendary Baja 1000. By the mid-90s, Toyota's racing domination made the little Toyota Pickup the compact truck to have. And everyone who wanted one had to have the red, orange, and yellow Toyota Motorsports decal across the side so they could share the glory with Iron Man Stewart. But here's the thing. At this point, the Toyota Hilux platform was old. It was still the same simple truck from the 70s, more or less. And for the American market, one of the few places in the world where people would daily drive their truck, it was time for something new. And that something was the Toyota Tacoma. The Tacoma was released in 1995, but it started its development back in '89. It was designed by the same guy who first drew the Lexus SC and later the Mark V Toyota Supra, Kevin Hunter. And from an engineering standpoint, the goal was simple. It was to have all of the durability and practicality of the Hilux, but in a safer, more comfortable, and more livable package. Plus, it would be totally built in America at the NUMMI plant in California, doubling down on Toyota's commitment to the American market. The perfect daily driver for truck-crazy Americans who were starting to develop a trust for Toyota reliability and also a taste for the Toyota racing Kool-Aid. Speaking of which, the Tacoma saw its first big race in the Championship Off-Road Racing Series in 1997. Johnny Greaves and Jeff Kincaid won basically every single race in their Tacomas. And Toyota would go on to win the Pro Light Championship for 7 years in a row. But here's the thing though, winning races is fine and dandy, But how does that actually translate to making the road cars better? Well, how about the introduction of the Toyota Racing Development Supercharger Kit in 1997? Yes, that's right. Toyota offered a dealer-installed supercharger system for your Toyota Tacoma. They offered it for all three of the Taco's engine options, but in the top 3.4-liter V6 trim, it bumped power from a measly 190 to 254 horsepower and 270 pound-feet of torque. And if that wasn't enough, Toyota also offered a fuel system upgrade to boost horsepower to 262. And because it was all Toyota parts, the fitment was flawless and just as reliable as the motor it was bolted to. The very next year, they came out with the TRD off-road package as well, adding locking diffs to the standard fully boxed frame and Bilstein suspension. It was a fantastic overall package, one that saw sales growing consistently through the 90s. But for the 2000 model year, sales of the Tacoma took a little bit of a hit. That was because of a new competitor from Toyota. Yes, Toyota stepped on the toes of their own Tacoma by releasing the Toyota Tundra. This was new territory for Toyota, a full-size pickup truck, one that would go head-to-head with bestsellers from Ford, GM, and Dodge. It was a similar setup to the Tacoma, a fully boxed frame, the same 3.4-liter V6, and optional supercharger, but this was the big leagues now. They were going up against the Ford F-150 with its Triton V8, a 5.4-liter monster that made 260 horsepower and 350 pound-feet of torque. That was a motor that could move any hay bale you could throw at it, and the little Toyota V6 just wasn't a match. So Toyota took to the drawing board and developed their very own V8 engine. They took the 4-liter V8 from the Lexus LS400 and re-engineered it to handle the intense workload of towing and hauling, and what they ended up with was the 2UZ, a 4.7-liter V8 that made 245 horsepower and 315 pound-feet of torque. It may not sound like much, but it was a big upgrade from the even supercharged V6 in the torque department, and a motor that was much better suited to what Tundra buyers wanted. And want it, they did, because the Toyota Tundra at launch had Toyota's highest ever initial sales. People just couldn't get enough of them. Motor Trend even named it Truck of the Year. And in the mad dash of buyers cleaning out Toyota dealerships, most companies would have sat on their behinds and raked in the cash. But you know what Toyota did? They went racing. The Tundra joined the Tacoma in its motorsports dominance. They took it off-road racing, they went to NASCAR as the first ever Japanese manufacturer, and in the second year of Tundra production, they thought, heck, let's throw a supercharger on the V8 too. Toyota had figured out the formula. Win on Sunday, sell on Monday was in full effect. And throughout the 2000s, they didn't slow down. 2006 saw their first big NASCAR win. 2009, they won the Pro 4-wheel drive class in the off-road championship. And by 2010, Toyota had solidified their place as the best of the rest, selling less trucks overall than the big three, but far more than anyone else. And you wouldn't be remiss to think that that would mean Toyota would be trying twice as hard to catch up to the Americans. But you see, Toyota sold less trucks, especially Tundras, but they sold more vehicles overall than pretty much anyone. Toyota's wide market reach throughout the noughties meant that they were selling nearly 500,000 more cars than GM in some years. Add to that the fact that the Ford Ranger and GMC Canyon just didn't have the daily driver truck chops of the Tacoma, so the Taco was king of the mid-sized truck segment. And it also meant that Toyota got a bit complacent. The Tacoma and Tundra basically went unchanged for over a decade. Sure, the motors were updated and a few problem areas were fixed, but for the most part, buying a Toyota truck meant buying something that you knew was reliable, but also felt like it was from Y2K. The same couldn't be said for American brands like Ford, who were regularly updating their trucks and coming out with badass new trims like the F-150 Raptor. The Raptor was the supercar of pickup trucks, with an optional 500 horsepower 6.2-liter V8 and long travel Fox Racing suspension. And while it might seem like a bit of a yabo car to the general public, for car and truck guys, this thing was our latest obsession. Ford sold over 10,000 of them every year for the first couple of years and used them as a halo truck to get people into dealerships to boost the base truck sales as well. And for Toyota, who was already far behind Ford, what the hell were all of the Baja 1000 wins, the off-road championships, the NASCAR upsets for if they couldn't compete? So in 2014, Toyota gave Ford a response, the TRD Pro. This was a trim package available for the Tacoma, Tundra, and 4Runner And it was pretty serious stuff. TRD tuned Bilstein shocks with remote reservoirs, a 2-inch lift, beadlock style aluminum wheels, BF Goodrich off-road tires, and a TRD exhaust even, all of which was race proven when Toyota entered a basically stock Tundra into the Baja 1000. Basically everything you needed to get your personal Tundra or Taco dirt and desert ready. Everything except for horsepower. While Ford was out here giving their buyers options for powerful V8s, Toyota was stuck with evolutions of their same V6 and V8 motors. The 4-liter 1GR V6 in the top trim Tacomas made 245 horsepower with no option for a TRD supercharger outside of one special edition model. And even though the Tundra's top V8 was now bored out to 5.7 liters, the 381 horsepower it made paled in comparison to what you could get from the Blue Oval. Toyota's attempt at a super truck was missing a vital ingredient. And it honestly seemed like that motorsports magic carpet that they had been riding on for so long was losing altitude fast. Plus, with their trucks stuck looking older and older every subsequent model year, sales were starting to plateau, especially for the Tundra. Toyota knew they needed a radical upgrade, and while it may have taken another 7 years, it finally came. In 2022, the Toyota Tundra was completely overhauled from top to bottom. Gone was the old tried and true chassis, and in its place, a new body-on-frame GAF global platform. It was a lighter, more rigid, more modular platform on which they could build any of their trucks and SUVs, and under the hood was no longer an aging V8, but rather a modified version of the twin-turbo 3.4-liter V6 found in the Lexus LS. A motor that put out 389 horsepower and 479 pound-feet of torque out the box, way beefier than anything that came before it. And if you wanted a little more juice, you could have that too. But this time, it wasn't dealer-installed tuner parts. The Toyota Tundra was now available with a hybrid flywheel electric motor system, one that didn't just help you sip less gas, it also boosted output to 437 horsepower and 583 pound-feet of torque. 583 pound-feet of torque, a number that would put hair on the chest of any truck enthusiast. And now, paired with the TRD Pro trims, Fox racing shocks, aluminum skid plates, locking differentials, you finally had something that could go toe-to-toe with the best of America. And not just in America either, because this was the same twin-turbo V6 drivetrain inside of the Toyota GR Hilux, the race truck that propelled Toyota and Nasser Al-Attiyah to a huge win at the 2022 Dakar Rally. A race that can only be described as one of the most difficult on the planet. The Toyota truck was officially back, baby. And sales of the Tundra increased 25% from the old 2021 model to 2022. This revamp was exactly what they needed. But now the waiting game had started. What about the Tacoma? It took another year, but in May of 2023, Toyota announced that the new Tacoma was on its way, and it would be getting the full treatment that the Tundra got. The same TNGAF platform with a high-strength steel frame, rear coil suspension, aluminum body panels, aggressive styling that brought the Taco firmly into the present day, and now, no more geriatric V6. This time, it's a 2.4-liter turbo inline-4, and before you say anything, it made 278 horsepower and 339 pound-feet of torque. Way more torque than the old V6 in a much smaller package, but come on, the Tundra got its McLaren P1 hybrid treatment, so surely the Taco deserves a little something something. And well, you'd be right. Just like the Tundra, a hybrid flywheel iForce Max system would be available for the Taco, and it would be capable of 326 horsepower and 465 pound-feet of torque. 465 pound-feet of torque in a Tacoma. That's a number that you can't even beat with a Porsche 911 until you get to a turbo. Toyota did exactly what they needed to. They brought the specs into the modern day, and as for how it drives, well, we drove one, and it was pretty damn good. The new 4-cylinder powertrain delivers. No more asthmatic climb through the RPMs. The Turbo 4 is torquey and responsive from down low, and even the new 8-speed auto does a good job of sending power to whichever wheels you select without much fuss, all while disappearing into the background when you're cruising. There's still a manual transmission too, and it's a manual. It feels like a truck. Long throws, light clutch, lots of rev hang, and if it were my money, I'd just get the auto and leave the manual for something without a bed. But the real highlight is that the Tacoma is still a very capable off-roader. And you don't even need to go to the TRD Pro. The much cheaper TRD off-road trim still has an electronically controlled transfer case, LSD, remote reservoir Bilstein shocks, a setup that easily trounced an admittedly basic off-road course, even with Zan granny shifting not double clutching like it should. And here's the thing, the current gen Tacoma currently owns 47% of the mid-sized truck market. And now, with the new truck having the capabilities it does, I have no doubt that number will continue to grow. And from where they started with that rinky-dink Toyota pickup in the 80s, it's a testament to Toyota sticking to the philosophy of proving their products in the most extreme of racing environments, the philosophy of listening to their customers even when the market saw them as outsiders, the philosophy of knowing when to double down and when to pull out all the stops and change course. A philosophy that has led to Toyota being the lone Japanese brand to not only take on the Americans on their home turf, but to dominate as well. Thanks for watching. By the way, Toyota isn't the only brand to use racing to sell their cars. Mitsubishi did this too, which we made a video on that you can watch right now. And if you want to support us, you can buy the merch link down below or join us on Patreon or YouTube memberships. I'll see you in the next one.